You ever meet someone who just sucks the life out of every room they walk into? Someone who, no matter what, always finds a way to make your blood boil, but somehow still walks around like the world owes them everything? Yeah, that's Dina. But before I get too far ahead, let me set the stage for you. I was 18 when all this started. I just moved into a 3-bedroom apartment with 3 girls from college. Don't ask me how I ended up there. It's a long story in itself. But trust me, I was living every guy's fantasy on the outside and every introvert's nightmare on the inside. One of those girls happened to be Dina, and through her, I eventually met her brother, Jack. And let me tell you, Jack, he turned out to be one of the best friends I've ever had. Loyal, down-to-earth, someone you could actually trust. The complete opposite of his sister. A couple of years down the line, Jack got this amazing opportunity. One of his coworkers was renting out a 4-bedroom house. It was huge, had space for parties, and honestly felt like a big step up from the cramped apartment life. Jack, being the generous guy he is, invited me to move in. He also offered a room to his sister Dina and her boyfriend, plus another guy from his work named Tanner. On paper, perfect setup. In reality, well, you'll see. Now here's where things get interesting. The way rent was split seemed fair. I had the smallest room, so I paid $250. Jack had a regular room, paying $400. Tanner lucked out with his own bathroom, so he paid $450. And Dina, along with her boyfriend, took the master bedroom, massive, 2 closets, jacuzzi tub, the whole deal. Their share was $600. That added up to the full $1,700 rent, which in the early 2000s was an absolute steal for a house that size. At first, things seemed fine. But if you've ever lived with someone selfish, you know the honeymoon phase doesn't last long. And Dina, she was the definition of selfish. Let me paint the picture of who she was. Dina was the kind of girl who thought her looks gave her a free pass to treat everyone like garbage. Sure, she was pretty at first glance, but her personality? Rotten, ugly to the core. The type of girl who'd make you jump through hoops just for her attention. You'd buy her a flower and she'd sneer, "If you're going to get me one, you better buy flowers for all my friends too." Yeah, that kind of girl. She was judgmental too. Always had something to say about the girlfriends I dated. Always acting like she was above everyone else. But here's the kicker. She was always broke. Always borrowing money. Always begging their mom to cover her bills. And never paying anyone back. Jack, being her brother, got the worst of it. She used him over and over, and their mom? Oh, she'd always pull the family comes first card, guilt-tripping Jack into bailing Dina out. By the time we all moved into that house, Jack was already tired of her games. He didn't say out loud, but I could see it, the way his jaw clenched when she bragged about some new Navy boyfriend, or how he sighed when she forgot to pay him back. Dina had a type, by the way, military guys. She chased them like trophies. Marines, Navy, didn't matter. She wanted the benefits, the paycheck, the stability. Eventually, she even married one, had a kid, got divorced, and leached off his benefits. But at this point in the story, that was still years away. Back then, she was just Dina, the selfish, entitled sister who thought she could walk all over anyone, including her own brother. You'd think Dina and her boyfriend would be excited to move into their massive new room. And she was until the boyfriend bailed on her. No joke. The guy broke up with her the day they moved. Instead of heading south to our house, he went north and moved back in with his parents. Just like that, Dina was alone. Now, here's where the problem started. Jack reminded her very clearly that she was still responsible for the $600 rent, no matter what. Dina nodded, acted cool about it, said, "Sure, no problem." But when rent came due, she handed him $300. When Jack asked about the rest, she smirked and said, "This is my half. If you want the other half, go ask my ex-boyfriend." I wish you could have seen Jack's face. The mix of rage, shock, and disbelief. He covered her share that first month just so he wouldn't fall short on rent with his co-worker. But this little stunt, it became her routine. 3 months in a row, Dina only handed over $300. And every time, Jack had to scramble to make up the other half. Every time, he got angrier. Every time, the tension in that house grew thicker. Living there became hell. Jack was constantly pounding on her door, demanding rent she never intended to pay. Dina acted like she was a victim, whining about money while still going out, buying new clothes, meeting new military guys. I could see Jack breaking down. Not in tears. Jack wasn't the type to cry, but in silence. You know, when someone's anger doesn't come out in words, it just eats them from the inside. That was Jack. And the worst part? His mom kept siding with Dina. Anytime Jack tried to bring it up, she'd guilt-trip him. Say things like, "She's your sister. You have to look out for her. Family comes first." I'll never forget the night Jack sat at the kitchen table, just staring at his half-empty beer. He didn't say a word for the longest time. Then finally, he muttered under his breath, "I can't do this anymore." That was the moment I knew. Something was coming. Jack wasn't the type to lash out without a plan. He wasn't reckless. If anything, he was calculated. And with Dina constantly disrespecting him, constantly using him, something inside him finally snapped. But instead of yelling at her, instead of dragging her by the arm and throwing her out, he decided he was going to play the long game. And his first move? He needed my help. One morning, Jack shook me awake. "Get up," he whispered. "I need you." My heart jumped. Jack never woke me up like that. I rubbed my eyes, groggy, and asked what was wrong. His answer? "We're kicking Dina out of the master bedroom." I sat up instantly. My brain raced. Was he serious? How the hell were we going to do that? But Jack already had a plan. Somehow, don't ask me how, he had gotten hold of Dina's room key. He copied it. He looked me dead in the eye, and for the first time in months, I saw something besides frustration on his face. I saw resolve. "We're moving her into my old room," he said. "I'm taking the master. She hasn't paid a full rent share in months. She doesn't deserve it." And right then, I knew this was only the beginning. That morning was the spark. The moment Jack decided enough was enough. The house had been poisoned by Dina's selfishness for too long. But now it was time for a shift. Dina thought she could walk all over her brother. She thought family ties meant she'd never face consequences. She was wrong. Because Jack's revenge? It was about to flip her entire world upside down. You know how sometimes life pushes you so far that you don't even get angry anymore? You just go cold. That's where Jack was. Months of Dina handing him half rent. Months of her smirking like he was her personal ATM. Months of their mom excusing every selfish thing she did. It finally drained him of every ounce of patience. He wasn't her brother anymore. He wasn't her safety net. He was a man done being used. That morning, when Jack told me, "We're kicking Dina out of the master bedroom," I thought he was joking. But one look in his eyes, and I knew he wasn't. Jack wasn't the type to pull pranks. He wasn't the type to bluff. When he said something, he meant it. I got out of bed, still half asleep, and followed him down the hall. Jack pulled out a shiny silver key, her copy key, and held it up like a soldier flashing his weapon before battle. "Today," he said, "Dina learns what it feels like to lose." We slipped into Dina's master bedroom quietly. She was out, probably crashing at some new guy's place. The second we opened the door, a wave of stench hit us like a punch to the gut. And let me tell you, if you think someone who acts high and mighty must at least keep their place clean, you'd be wrong. Her room was disgusting. Clothes piled on the floor like a thrift store after a tornado. Dishes with half-eaten food stacked on her desk. Makeup caked into the carpet. And the bathroom? Don't even get me started. The sink, the jacuzzi, the toilet, all stained, all reeking. For someone who spent all her time looking down on others, Dina sure lived like a pig. I started carefully gathering her stuff. Folding clothes, stacking boxes. Because, even though I hated her attitude, I couldn't bring myself to trash her things. But Jack? Oh! Jack had no such hesitation. Every box he picked up, he practically launched into her new room. Shoes? Tossed. Jackets? Slammed. Makeup bag? He hurled it like a fastball. It wasn't just moving, it was catharsis. Every throw was months of pent-up rage leaving his body. I remember watching him fling one of her heavy bags across the room and hearing him mutter, "This is for every dollar she stole from me." We moved everything into Jack's old room, the much smaller, much crappier room. No private bathroom, no walk-in closet, just 4 walls and a creaky bed frame. Jack didn't care how messy it looked when he set her things down. To him, this was war. And once we cleared out the master, Jack moved his own stuff in. His bed, his desk, his clothes. It felt symbolic, like he was reclaiming what was rightfully his. The final step? He swapped the locks. Dina's old key wouldn't work anymore. That room was his now. By the time we finished, Jack was breathing hard, sweat dripping down his forehead, but there was a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Not joy, not satisfaction. Relief, for the first time in months. He looked lighter, but Jack wasn't dumb. He knew Dina would explode when she got home. He didn't want to be there when she found out. So what did we do? We went to the movies. Just 2 guys sitting in the dark, watching explosions on screen, while knowing the real fireworks were about to go off back at the house. Jack even turned his phone off. He wanted 0 interruptions. When the movie ended, Jack finally powered his phone back on. Within seconds, ding, 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 a flood of voicemails and missed calls filled his screen. Dina had called. Their mom had called. Even some random number had called. Probably whatever poor guy Dina had dragged along with her. Jack just stared at the screen, then hit play on the first voicemail. Dina's voice shrieked through the speaker. "What the hell did you do to my room? My key doesn't work. You think you can just steal my room? You're gonna pay for this, Jack." Another message, this time from their mom. "Jack, you better let your sister back into her room. She's family. I raised you better than this. I can't believe you'd treat Dina this way. Fix it. Now." Jack just chuckled bitterly and shook his head. "Unbelievable," he muttered. He called his mom back, right there, in the parking lot. I'll never forget what he said. "Mom, you've been enabling Dina her entire life. Every time she screws up, you make it someone else's problem. Usually mine. I've had enough. She's not my responsibility. And if you keep defending her, then you're just as bad as she is." Click. He hung up. Meanwhile, back at the house, poor Tanner. See, Jack and I hadn't thought about him when we bailed. He was still home when Dina showed up, dragging some new guy with her. Tanner told us later exactly how it went down. Dina strutted up the stairs, key in hand, her new boyfriend trailing behind her. She stuck the key into the lock, turned it. Nothing. Tried again. Still nothing. Tanner said he could hear her from the living room. What the hell? Why isn't this working? There was a pause. Then he heard her footsteps shuffle across the hall to the other room, the sound of a lock clicking, the creak of a door opening, and then her voice screeching at the top of her lungs. "Oh, why God did." Apparently, Dina stormed inside, rifled through her things, and then came back downstairs, eyes blazing, pointing a finger right at Tanner. "What did you do? Did you let them move my stuff?" Poor Tanner looked up from the TV. Confused as hell. "What are you talking about? I didn't do anything." But Dina wasn't hearing it. She was already in full meltdown mode, yelling at him like he'd personally betrayed her. Tanner just sat there, jaw clenched, letting her scream until she finally stormed out. Phone pressed to her ear. That night, Tanner blew up at us too. And honestly, he was right. We should have given him a heads up. But in the chaos of plotting Dina's downfall, he hadn't even crossed our minds. Still, deep down, I think Tanner understood. He didn't like Dina either. He was just caught in the crossfire. Now here's where things got tricky for me. Because after the switch, guess who had to share a bathroom with Dina? Yep, me. And if there's one thing I knew about her, it was this. She was vindictive. I didn't trust her for a second not to mess with my stuff. I could already picture her grabbing my toothbrush and swirling it around the toilet bowl just to spite me. So I got smart. I left all my normal things, shampoo, toothpaste, deodorant, out in the bathroom where she could see them. But those weren't the ones I used. The ones I actually used, I kept hidden in my room. New toothbrush, new shower gel, everything I wasn't giving her a chance to poison me. And trust me, she tried. One weekend, the rug in the bathroom, my rug, had some kind of mystery substance smeared all over it. I'll spare you the details, but let's just say it wasn't toothpaste. Another time, she ripped down the shower curtain because one of the rings had torn. She threw the whole thing out and then had the audacity to demand I buy a new one. But me? Oh! I wasn't giving her the satisfaction. I showered without a curtain for an entire week. Let the water splash everywhere. If she wanted to live in chaos, fine. I could out-petty her any day. And when I finally did buy a new curtain, oh! It was the girliest, most ridiculous one I could find. Pink flowers, frilly edges, the whole 9 yards. Did I care? Not at all. The look on her face when she saw it was worth every penny. Dina thought she could bully Jack into submission. She thought their mom would protect her forever. She thought she was untouchable. Dina had always believed she was untouchable. In her world, people bent over backwards for her. Her boyfriend spoiled her. Her mom defended her. Her brother covered her mistakes. But after Jack locked her out of the master bedroom, that little world of hers started crumbling. The night she discovered her room was gone, Dina went nuclear. She screamed at Tanner. She called Jack 50 times, and she ran to her mom until her voice was raw. When Jack and I finally came home from the movies, the house felt like walking into the aftermath of a tornado. Dina's voice echoed through the walls, shrill and venomous. She was on the phone with their mom, pacing the living room, waving her arms like she was leading an orchestra of chaos. The second she spotted Jack, her face twisted into this mask of fury. "You think you could just take my room?" she screeched. "You can't do that, Jack. That's illegal or something. I'm telling Mom. I'm telling everyone." Jack didn't even flinch. He just walked past her, cool as ice, and said, "You didn't pay rent. You don't get the master." Simple as that. She gasped like he just punched her. "I paid half. That's my share." Jack spun on his heel, his voice rising for the first time. "You don't get half a master bedroom, Dina. That's not how it works. I've been covering for you for months, and I'm done. You either pay or you take the smaller room. End of story." For once, Dina had no comeback. She just stood there, jaw tight, eyes wide, phone trembling in her hand. But of course, she wasn't about to let it go. Not Dina. Over the next few weeks, living with her turned into a full-blown war. The bathroom battles. I'd already hidden my real toothbrush, shampoo, and everything else in my room because I knew she'd stoop low. And I was right. It started with the rug. One morning, I stepped into the bathroom and froze. My once clean rug was smeared with something. I'm not exaggerating when I say it looked like someone had deliberately rubbed grime into it. I stared at it, my stomach twisting. This was an accident. Dina had done it. I picture her smirking as she ground her dirty shoes, or worse, into the fibers, and I could almost hear her voice. "Oops, guess you'll have to buy a new one." I didn't give her the satisfaction. I left it there, dirty, ruined. Every time she walked in, she had to look at the rug she destroyed, and every time I smiled a little inside. Then came the shower curtain. One of the rings tore, tiny little rip, nothing major. Most people would just shrug it off. But Dina? No. She yanked the whole curtain down and tossed it straight into the trash. When I asked her why, she smirked and said, "It was ruined. You should buy a new one." You know what I did? I showered without a curtain. For a whole week. Water sprayed everywhere. The bathroom floor was soaked daily. But I didn't care. And then I replaced it with the most ridiculously girly curtain I could find. Pink, frilly, covered in butterflies. I hung it proudly. The look on Dina's face when she saw it? Priceless. But Dina wasn't just after me. She went harder at Jack. She nagged him, yelled at him, left angry notes on the fridge. She called their mom almost daily, ranting about how unfair he was, how he'd stolen her room, how he was a horrible brother. Their mom, of course, tried to guilt-trip him. "Jack, she's your sister. She need that room. She's struggling." And Jack, finally free of her manipulation, shot back. "She's not struggling, Mom. She's lazy. She uses people. And I'm done being her crutch. You could offend her all you want, but she's not living rent-free off me anymore. For the first time in his life, Jack stood his ground. Meanwhile, Dina kept spiraling. She brought home random guys like trophies, parading them through the house like she owned the place. She blasted music at 2 a.m. She picked fights over dirty dishes she never washed. And when she ran out of ways to annoy Jack, she turned her venom on me. Passive-aggressive comments slipped out daily. Oh, must be nice having your little friends stay here rent-free. Some people don't pay rent and still act like they own the place. She was referring to a co-worker of mine, a girl going through a rough time, who I'd let crash with me temporarily. The girl worked 2 jobs and cleaned more in 1 week than Dina had in her entire life. But Dina couldn't stand her. I think, deep down, she hated having another woman in the house who outshined her. Every time Dina made a snide remark, I just smiled politely. But inside, I was plotting my own small victories. And oh, the petty revenge was sweet. Like the time Dina left her dirty dishes in the sink for 3 days. I didn't clean them. Nope. I stacked them neatly on her bed. Or the time she stole my soda from the fridge. I replaced it with sparkling water. Clear bottle, same shape. She took 1 sip and nearly gagged. Little things. Small, harmless. But every time I got under her skin, I felt like I was reclaiming a little piece of sanity. The house became a battlefield of silent wars and petty victories. But the real turning point came a few months later, when Dina's life outside the house started unraveling too. Her boyfriends? They never lasted. The military guys wised up, realized she was after their benefits, and bailed. Her finances? A mess. She was always late on bills, always begging Jack or her mom for help, always playing the victim. And eventually, it all caught up to her. She got kicked out of her new place for being late on rent. And where did she go? Right back to Jack. Now, here's where Jack showed his true genius. By then, we already had a new roommate in Dina's old small room. So Jack told her straight-faced she could stay on the futon, not in the living room, not in the guest room, on the futon shoved into the dining room. Dina, once the self-proclaimed queen of the master bedroom, was now crashing like an unwanted guest. The humiliation was thick. One night, we had some friends over. We were drinking, laughing, playing the drinking version of Jenga at the kitchen bar. The wooden blocks clattered loudly. Our laughter echoed through the house. One of the girls looked toward the dining room and whispered, "Should we be quiet? Someone's sleeping out there." Jack didn't miss a beat. He raised his glass and said loud enough for everyone to hear, F*** that bitch. She doesn't pay rent. Anyone who doesn't pay rent can get the hell out if they don't like it here. The room erupted in laughter. Dina, curled up on the futon, went red with embarrassment. That night, the tables had truly turned. High voltage cliffhanger ending for part 3. Dina, the girl who thought she was untouchable, was now the house joke. Her power? Gone. Her pride? Shattered. But the sweetest revenge wasn't even Jack's. Because the final blow, the one that truly exposed Dina for who she was still to come. And it would come not from Jack, but from... By the time Dina was stuck on that futon, she wasn't just a roommate anymore. She was a problem waiting to explode. She'd lost the master bedroom. She'd lost control of the house. And worst of all, she'd lost her audience. Nobody bought her victim act anymore. Not Jack. Not me. Not even her own mom, who was growing tired of the constant phone calls. But Dina wasn't the type to fade quietly. No, she needed drama. She needed attention. And when she couldn't get it from us, she turned to the one place she thought she still had power: men. Dina had been bragging for weeks about this new Navy guy she was seeing. Let's call him Ethan. She strutted around the house, tossing her hair, flashing texts from him like they were trophies. "He's obsessed with me," she purred one night, sipping wine on the futon like she was royalty. "He's about to get deployed, but he wants me to have his benefits while he's gone. Can you imagine?" Her eyes glittered with dollar signs. I remember locking eyes with Jack across the room. We didn't even need words. We both knew what was happening. Dina wasn't in love with Ethan. She was in love with the idea of financial security. And for a while, it looked like she might actually pull it off. Ethan was smitten. He took her out, bought her little gifts, and listened to her endless sob stories about being a mistreated sister. But then, Ethan came to the house. It was a Friday night. Dina had invited Ethan over for dinner. She made a big show of it, cooking pasta, lighting candles, wearing this over-the-top red dress like she was auditioning for The Bachelor. Jack and I stayed out of her way, quietly eating pizza in the kitchen. We had no intention of ruining her night. But Dina? Oh, she couldn't resist dragging us into her performance. When Ethan arrived, Dina introduced us like we were her terrible, freeloading roommates. "This is Jack," she said sweetly. "My brother. He used to have the master bedroom, but then he stole it from me. Can you believe that? And this is me, his friend. She kind of just lives here." She said it with this little smirk, like she expected Ethan to gasp in horror at how awful we were. Instead, Ethan glanced around the house, then back at Dina. "Wait, you don't pay rent." The silence was so heavy you could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Jack leaned back in his chair, folded his arms, and said flatly, "She hasn't paid rent in months. She trashed the bathroom, ruined the rugs, broke stuff that wasn't hers. But yeah, tell him more about how I stole your room, Dina." Her face went crimson. She sputtered something about us exaggerating. But Ethan's expression told the whole story. Doubt, confusion, and just the faintest glimmer of disappointment. Dinner was awkward after that. Ethan barely touched his pasta. Dina laughed too loud at her own jokes, drank half a bottle of wine by herself, and pretended not to notice that Ethan had gone quiet. By the end of the night, when he kissed her goodbye at the door, it wasn't passion. It was pity. The next week was chaos. Dina could sense Ethan slipping away, and she doubled down. She texted him constantly, begged him come over, picked fights with Jack and me just to have stories to tell him later. One night, after Ethan didn't answer her calls, Dina completely lost it. She stormed into the living room where Jack and I were watching a movie and started screaming. "You ruined everything. He thinks I'm a liar because of you too. You always make me look bad. You're jealous because I'm prettier, because men actually want me." Her voice cracked, her mascara ran, and for the first time, she looked small. Not powerful, not intimidating, just pathetic. Jack didn't yell back. He just sighed and said, "Dina, you don't need me to ruin things for you. You do that all by yourself." She froze, and for once, she had no comeback. 2 days later, Ethan broke it off. No dramatic fight, no angry text, just a short, polite message. "I don't think we're a good fit. I need someone who's honest and independent. I wish you the best." That was it. Dina read the text aloud, her voice trembling, her hands shaking. She threw her phone across the futon like it had betrayed her, and then she cried, loud, heaving sobs that echoed through the house. Not delicate little tears, ugly crying, wailing, like the world had ended. I stood in the hallway, watching her crumble, and instead of pity, all I felt was relief, because this was it. The mask was gone. Dina wasn't the glamorous, untouchable queen she wanted everyone to believe. She was just a selfish, manipulative girl who finally ran out of people to use. Jack had had enough. That weekend, he sat Dina down at the kitchen bar and laid it out plain. "You're not on the lease. You don't pay rent. You've made this house miserable for everyone. It's time for you to go." Dina's eyes widened like he'd slapped her. "You're kicking out your own sister?" "Yeah," Jack said. "I am." She turned to me, desperate. "You're just going to let him do this? After everything?" I met her gaze and said softly, "Dina, you've burned every bridge. I don't know what you expect anymore." And just like that, it was over. She packed her things in a rage, throwing clothes into trash bags, stomping down the hallway like a storm. Every few minutes she'd mutter, "You'll regret this. You'll miss me when I'm gone." But the truth? We couldn't wait. When the front door finally slammed shut behind her, the house felt lighter, the air clearer, like someone had opened a window after years of suffocating. Life without Dina was peaceful. Jack and I could breathe. We laughed again, hosted friends, cooked dinner without worrying our food would mysteriously disappear from a fridge. The bathroom stayed clean. The dishes got washed. The house became a home. Every so often, Dina would pop back into our lives, usually through a frantic call to Jack, begging for money or a place to stay. But Jack never caved again. He'd learned the hardest lesson of all. You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. Months later, I ran into someone who knew Dina. They told me she was bouncing from couch to couch, fighting with every friend who tried to help her, cycling through boyfriends faster than ever. The Navy guy, he was engaged to someone else. And Dina, she was still telling the same story. That everyone else was the problem, that she was the victim. But the difference now was no one was buying it. Her reputation had caught up with her. And without someone to prop her up, Dina was left with nothing but her lies. Looking back, I realized something important. Revenge doesn't always mean grand gestures or elaborate plans. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge is simply stepping back and letting people destroy themselves. Dina built her world on manipulation and selfishness. And when we stopped playing along, her whole world collapsed. Jack got his freedom. I got my peace. And Dina, she got exactly what she deserved.